Yo, what is up? It is your boys that are back with a brand new part. So what if Deku had Shirakumos powers? Now, as you can see from the title, this is going to be the finale to this amazing series. I know it's had an amazing run on this channel, and I know a lot of people have this series dear to their heart because I definitely got a lot of brand new subscribers from this series. I mean, it's one of those things that not a lot of other people are doing, and sadly, all good things have to come to an end. But trust me, guys, I will definitely be pumping out way better ideas in the future, and I hope you guys will stick around to watch me grow on this journey. But with that being said, let's go ahead and get into this recap and then get started. So, on the last part, we had basically left off with the provisional license exams. Deku passed, as well as the rest of his class. We also went over the Overhaul arc, and Deku ended up, let's just say that he ended up massacring Overhaul because Overhaul had nothing against this man. And we also basically went over how Deku and Uraraka ended up taking out the gentle criminal. And we had basically left off on that note. So, yeah, let's go ahead and get started into this finale, and I hope you guys enjoy it. But with that being said, let's get started. So, after those events, after that day of the little party that they had, the little UA festival, basically what it ended up happening was Deku and Uraraka ended up going home after that. Now, Uraraka ends up texting Deku. She's like, hey, Deku, do you want to come over and train? And Deku's like, sure, Uraraka, I'll be right there in about a minute. Now, this one, Deku would legit open his window and jump out and hop onto one of his clouds. He would begin to fly to Uraraka's house and land right by her window. Now, this one, Uraraka would open up the window and be like, hey, Deku, you got here pretty quickly. Deku would be like, yeah, I mean, I had nothing else to do, so what do you want to work on? And this one, Uraraka would basically look at Deku and say, well, I kind of wanted to work on you. And this is when Deku would be like, oh, word? And we already know what goes down after this. I just kind of figured I'd throw this out there. But if you're picking up what I'm putting down, then you get what I'm saying. But yeah, that ends up happening. They end up chilling a little bit, watching a little bit of movies, a little some. And basically after that day, they end up going to class. Now, the very next day in class, it is announced to them that they're actually going to be having a joint training. And by this, I mean 1B and Class 1A is going to have like a little training session together. So basically what that entails is that they're going to be doing battles of 4-on-4 with each UA class having like a team of 4 and 1B class having a team of 4. Now for this particular thing, Shinso's also actually going to be participating since Aizawa has actually been training him. Now Aizawa was training him in using his scarf as well as his fighting ability since he saw a lot of himself in Shinso. So this means that Shinso is going to be in it. And the reason he's in this little joint training is because he wants to prove his worth to the teachers in 1A and 1B to see if he can get into the hero course and out of the general studies. So yeah, with that being said, let's go ahead and get started into the matches. Deku's team will consist of Mineta, what's it called? Jiro? No. Acid Girl. Ashido, I think that's her name. Ashido, as well as Uraraka. So that's basically what Deku's team consists of. Now, as soon as the match starts, Deku goes flying, and he goes straight for Shinso since he knows that that's probably going to be the biggest target on the other team. Now, once he goes flying to go look for Shinso, he basically tells Uraraka to help out Mineta as well as Ashido and to help them combine their quirks together to see what they can make. They could probably do something very unique with all the present quirks that they have. So Uraraka would basically nod her head and be like, okay, Deku, but promise me that you'll end this quickly. And Deku would be like, have I ever failed? And Uraraka's like, never. So Deku would basically go off, and right as he's about to go to Shinso, this is when out of nowhere, Deku's cloud will collapse and Deku will start falling straight at the ground. As soon as he does that, Uraraka sees this and she catches him, but before he can fall, Deku has some weird black tendrils going off of his fingers. Now, in case you guys don't know, in the current manga, Deku actually unlocks 7 new quirks. I believe it was 7. Yeah, he basically unlocks a couple quirks. And these quirks in the current manga are Float, Danger Detection, Black Whip, and that's it for now. He's only unlocked about 3 quirks, I believe. And yeah, that's basically all of the things that Deku has at the current moment. So Deku basically would unlock Black Whip, and as soon as he does that, things would be in chaos. The black tendrils would explode off of Deku, and Uraraka would try to go after Deku, but the tendrils would not let her get close to him. This is when Deku would see that he's gonna hurt Uraraka if he doesn't stop, so he uses all of his willpower and ends up trapping himself into a giant block of cloud. This is when he's flying in the air, struggling to control the Black Whip, when out of nowhere he turns into a cloud himself. he notices that he is a literal cloud and nothing can go through him. He goes to fly by Uraraka, but when she tries to touch him, her hand goes right through him. This is when Deku realizes that he can turn himself into a cloud. And Deku's like, what? This is awesome. Now, this is when Deku would actually begin to think back on the black tendrils that were shooting off of him. And Deku would think that he needs to end this as quick as possible before he hurts anybody. So after this, Deku ends up activating about 20% of one. No, let's go with 30% of One For All. Deku ends up activating 30% of One For All and just speed blitzing the entire rest of the team. He speed blitzes 1A as well as 1B, as well as Shinso, and he ends up taking them out rather quickly in about, let's say, 20 seconds. So after this, Deku basically ends up winning, and his team ends up winning. After the battle, Deku wonders if it's something to do with All Might's quirk, and Deku would wonder, if he could talk to him. This is when Deku would actually proceed to walk up to All Might and ask him if, he could talk to him after class. The rest of the battles would continue, and let's just say that, Shinso's match against Deku wasn't really accounted for since Deku's broken. Aizawa would have lost to him too, but yeah, that's basically what ends up happening. Deku ends up bodying, Bakugo ends up bodying, Todoroki's team ends up winning, and so forth and so forth. The rest of the matches don't really matter. But yeah, after class, this is when Deku would actually proceed to walk up to All Might's office. Now, All Might and Deku would proceed to talk, and All Might would tell him that this is the first time he has ever seen this, and that it may be the vestiges inside of One For All's previous quirks that are activating within the One For All quirk. This is when Deku would be like, One For All and previous vestiges? What do you mean, All Might? All Might would proceed to tell him, my successor's name... Oh wait, no, my predecessor's name was Nana Shimura. She had the quirk of float. If you end up getting that quirk as well, we can be certain that this is what's going on. And Deku's just kind of wondering to himself if that may be what's going on. Now, this is when Deku would actually be like, okay, I need to train this new quirk. This one out of nowhere, when he's talking to All Might, he would go into his mindscape and he would see the user of Black Whip. Now, the user would begin to tell him that he needs to use his anger. That's the trigger to the quirk of Black Whip. And after that, the vestige would disappear, telling him that he doesn't have much time. This is when Deku would appear back in the real world and would be like, All Might, it's what we suspected was true. It has to do with the previous users of One For All. Now, this one, All Might would ask if he saw Nana, and Deku would say that he didn't see anybody who fit that description. All Might would be like, oh, okay. And Deku would proceed to tell him that he needs to train with this quirk. This one, All Might would suggest to him that he should train with Sero, since he uses a sort of quirk that could actually help him when it comes to training that quirk. So for the next month or so, Deku would actually proceed to spend that training with Sero. Now, during this time, the current manga, the League of Villains are actually making amazing strides for themselves. As for them, Shigaraki and his main team, like Dabi, Toga, Twice, the Magician guy, Spinner, no, those guys aren't in there. But yeah, people like that. And One For All for One actually ended up telling them that he needed to get stronger. He needed to train. So he had basically put Shigaraki against a creature that was his. It's called Gigantomachia. It's basically the reincarnation of destruction, pretty much, if that's the way that I had to explain it. It's basically a giant Hulk, doomsday-looking creature that has multiple quirks. It does offer All For One's bidding, and he ends up actually fighting against Shigaraki and his team for about a month. Now, around that time, this is when all of that team would have actually gotten a big boost to their quirks as well as their general strengths, and All For One would actually be extremely pleased by the results. After this, Shigaraki would basically be told that he's going to be put through an experiment that will make his quirk go beyond. No. After this, Shigaraki will actually find out about a league called the Liberation Army. Now, Shigaraki and them will have a little bit of a quarrel. If you've read the manga, you know what I'm talking about. And Shigaraki would basically proceed to go with his team and go body them. Now, this battle would actually be pretty badass. In the current anime season that's coming out, pretty sure that Shigaraki in that Redestro fight is going to happen. It's called My Villain Academia. Spoilers. But yeah, you obviously knew that if you came into this. And I said this is manga territory. But yeah, so Shigaraki ends up winning that, and during this time, Deku would have actually mastered his Black Whip quirk. figured out to use it kind of like Spider-Man. He would legit just use it in that sort of way to catch cars in midair and try to stop them from hitting things and to swing around like a spider. Deku would have gotten that inspiration from Sero, since that's kind of how Sero uses his quirk, and Deku would basically follow after him. Now, this is when Shigaraki would actually be told by the quirk by the doctor, Ochiko, I think it is. Ojiko? I'm not sure, but something like that. Now, the doctor would have actually told him that if he wants, he can go through a procedure that will make him nearly perfect. A sort of nomification procedure where Shigaraki's quirk will be taken to the extremes and he will become an absolute monster. I'm just gonna say it now. Like, for those of you who don't know and haven't seen the manga, Shigaraki becomes a fucking beast. Also, we also ended up learning what Shigaraki's background story. Apparently, like I said, he's the grandson of Nana Shimura. Now, Nana had actually left her son in an orphanage due to fear of, the hero world actually causing him pain in his future life. So the father ended up hating heroes for that. And his son, Tomura, would have actually wanted to become a hero, but in sort of Deku. He was kind of like a Deku person when one day he awakened his quirk and ended up killing his family. He killed the dog first, and then his father, then his sister, and his mother, and his grandparents, I believe. That's why he has those arms on his face, the hands. That's what they are. They're his family. I have reason to believe that I'm pretty sure it was All For One that gave him that quirk and caused him to do that. So for the next couple of days, Shigaraki would wander the streets, wondering and looking for help, but nobody would help. They would all just assume that Shigaraki was going to get help from the heroes, but it never happened, causing Shigaraki to get that hate for the hero society that he has in, the anime. So yeah, that's the reason that he's like that. So for this current time, it's going to be a couple months that Shigaraki is going to have his body experimented on by the doctor. And during this time, Deku would have actually ended up learning the quirk of float, as well as the danger detection, since I just feel like giving it to him. So yeah, Deku would have actually ended up kind of training them. Float wouldn't really do much for him, since, he can turn into a cloud and fly on that, so nothing much. When it comes to danger detection, boys, that would make him extremely broken. Since, before it was damn near impossible to hit him, but now you're not hitting Deku. Like, it's just not happening. I'm sorry. But anyways, Deku would actually end up being with Uraraka one day after he had basically finished training with the danger detection quirk, and Uraraka would have been trying to hit him during this training. Now, this is when Uraraka would actually fall, and Deku would catch her with one of his clouds, and she would basically proceed to tell him that, wow, Deku, you're getting way stronger with your quirk. Deku would say, yeah. And this is when, out of nowhere, Deku would actually get a text message from All Might telling him that he wants to talk to him. So when All Might would inform Deku of the fact that his quirk, One For All, is basically having all of the rest of the remnants leave his body, so he is currently going to resign as a hero. And this means that Hero Endeavor would actually proceed to go into the limelight as the brand new #1 hero. All of the rest of the heroes would work up, and All Might would go into retirement. The world would be in a little bit of chaos, but everybody would have a little bit of a sense of reassurance, since Deku's out there, who they believe to be the next symbol of peace. Now, as this is happening, Deku would actually just be training when they get a call from a bunch of heroes, informing them about the situation with the League of Villains as well as the Liberation Army. They'd be told about this and be told about a secret location that they're going to be using to try to end the League of Villains once and for all. Now, this is when they would end up making a plan and choose a specific city in a certain area to have like a sort of attack on the villains. They would try to destroy all the no-moves and try to take down the League of Villains as quickly as possible. And as for All For One, at the current moment, he's trapped in prison. So, yeah. Now, when it comes to Deku's side, Deku would actually basically agree that he's going to be going on to this. And they would actually ask Uraraka as well as the rest of Class 1A to engage in this battle. A lot of heroes would be risking their lives, and Deku would have no other choice but to get into the battle. He would know that this is a life or death battle. There's no going back. If he messes up, he's done for. So he needs to go in this full throttle. Deku gets ready and he trains for the next couple of months, and when the day of the battle arrives, Deku would have become way more of a monster. He would have definitely honed more of his skills, as well as his cloud ability to just simply go through things. And he would have also gained the ability to create weapons out of his limbs, making them into clouds and creating a sort of weapons. He would also have way better what's it called, weather manipulation when it comes to clouds, so he could make lightning bolts strike down from the sky at any point that he wants. So yeah, Deku's definitely going to be very strong. At this current point, Deku would actually have 50, let's go with 60% of One For All unlocked. And Deku's body would be nothing to mess around with. At this point, Deku would be absolutely ripped, since he had not only trained his quirk, but his body as well. And yeah, this is when the day of the fateful battle would arrive. And Deku, Shigaraki would have to come to terms with what's going on. Now, in the current manga, Shigaraki was actually not finished. His experiment wasn't done. He was about 70% done with it, I believe. And that's when the heroes ended up crashing. All of that would actually happen just like the manga. Mirko would jump in there and basically start going crazy, trying to get to the quirk doctor. Hawks would end up having the same thing that happened to him. Tokiyami would help save him. The rest of Class 1A would not have to deal with Gigantomachia, since as soon as Deku went in there, Deku would actually go insane. He would rush in there and go straight for Gigantomachia. As soon as he saw him, he would decide that it was time and that he had to take him out first. He would have 5 lightning bolts strike him from the sky, and he would then proceed to hold him down with his clouds. Deku would then create giant chains from clouds and would tie him down to the ground. Gantomachia would try to break out, but Deku would have Momo create a serum that could, have him knocked out, and Momo would proceed to create about 10 of those. It'd be strong enough to take out 50 elephants, and they would inject all of those into Gigantomachia, taking him out of the battle immediately. Now, this is when the destruction of the hospital would appear, and a lot of the heroes that had died to Shigaraki's quirk of decay would end up dying. A massive amount of the city would begin to decay, and anything who would touch any part of the decay would end up rotting themselves and die. This one, Shigaraki would see this, and he would go in to try to save as many people as he could. He would end up saving a couple more than in canon, and as soon as he does that, this is when he would see Shigaraki. As soon as Deku lays his eyes on him, he would proceed to rush in there, and Shigaraki would try to touch him, turn him into dust, but Deku would go right through him and hit him in the back of the head. So when Shigaraki would get sent flying, and Shigaraki would say that he doesn't feel anything. He has regeneration, shock absorption, and from now on, he has all for one. He can take quirks, and Shigaraki has something in his head telling him that he needs to take Deku's quirk. Deku would have been trying to avoid all of Shigaraki's attacks, doing it kind of easily, and Shigaraki would have been using as many quirks as possible, trying to find the right one for the scenario to take out Deku. This is when Shigaraki would proceed to use a wind quirk. The wind would proceed to blow Deku's clouds away every time he turned into one, so Deku would have to have a lot of a harder battle against Shigaraki. The battle would go on, and Deku would decide that he needs to quit playing around. He would use his black whip to shoot Shigaraki into the sky, and would then proceed to rush at him and bombard him with giant scale attacks, pushing his body to his absolute limit, using 60% of One For All punches. He would hit Shigaraki, attacking him in a sort of Rock Lee versus Gaara fashion, and would basically do what 8 Gates Guy did to Madara. Now, this is when Deku would charge up 20 lightning bolts from the sky and shoot them down at Shigaraki, turning him into a crisp. His regeneration, however, would be helping him heal from that, and Shigaraki would still live. Now, this is when Shigaraki and Deku would go into a crazy brawl, which Shigaraki would then proceed to use his strongest strength, speed, regeneration quirks, and would proceed to try to rush at Deku and use a flight quirk to try to keep up with him. They would be fighting in the sky, and the rest of the heroes would be watching as Deku and Shigaraki would be going at it. Deku would throw punches, and Shigaraki would be trying to hit him, but every time Deku would turn into a cloud or would physically create a cloud in front of him to stop it. This is when Deku would create a cloud cage for Shigaraki to be inside of, and Shigaraki would be having a little bit of trouble with them. He would decay them immediately, but Deku and Shigaraki would be going at this for quite a while now. This is when Todoroki and Bakugo would arrive on the scene, and Todoroki would try to rush in there, try to help Deku, but Deku would scream, "No! Todoroki, get out of here!" And Shigaraki would go in to touch Todoroki's face as he gets super close and comes in to touch it, and Deku screams, "No!" Oh god, guys, dogs are going to start barking a little bit since there's dogs over here that are basically getting loose and they're going crazy. So if you guys hear some dog barking, then please excuse that. But with that being said, let's get back into the story. So as this happens, Deku would create a cloud barrier to stop him from touching Shigaraki, and Todoroki would barely dodge it himself. So Bakugo would understand the severity of the situation, and Deku would create two cloud clones, and Deku would make them grab Todoroki and Bakugo, trap them in clouds, and make them get out of there. This is when Deku would proceed to go in for Shigaraki and unleash his entire power. Deku would push past any limit he had ever pushed past before and would go straight into 100% of One For All. This is when Deku would clothe himself with cloud armor and would create 1,000 cloud clones. This is when Deku would proceed to go in and absolutely destroy Shigaraki, turning him into nothing but atoms, and Deku would proceed to obliterate Shigaraki. During this process, Deku would understand that he can't simply take Shigaraki out, he needs to kill him. And the rest of the heroes would be telling him that he can't do that, but Deku would inform them that this is the only way. This is when Deku would proceed to be like, there's no other option. And Deku would basically create a giant tornado out of clouds that would have Shigaraki get ripped from shred to shred. That's when Deku would ask Todoroki to shoot the strongest fire attack that he can into the tornado, and it would become a tornado of fire, cloud, and wind that would just be destroying Shigaraki's body, tearing him from limb. This is when Deku would rush in there and get his final attack. He would make 100 clouds come from the sky and shoot the strongest lightning bolts that could come back down. This one black lightning would appear from the sky, and it would atomize Shigaraki, turning him into nothingness. The battle would be over, but it would definitely be at a cost. As for Dabi's revelation into Endeavor, that would never happen, since Deku had rushed into the situation before any of that could happen. After this, Deku would be extremely drained, and the rest of the heroes would end up taking out Dabi as well as the other villains. Some of them would have ended up getting away, such as Toga, and Twice would have still been killed. Toga would have gone away, and Dabi would have gone away, but this is actually going to be resolved in a couple of minutes. Now, as for the black lightning in the sky, I'm just gonna go ahead and tell you guys that just wait for it. Wait for it. That's all I'm gonna say. That's all I'm gonna say. Just wait for it. I got something special cooking for y'all. But yeah, this is when Deku would proceed to try to get up, but Deku won't be able to. Deku would basically turn himself into a cloud to try not to feel all the pain that's urging through his body, and Deku would basically just lay there. The recovery would happen throughout the entire city, and a lot of the destruction would basically be toned down by a lot. There'd be a lot more death preventions in this arc, and Deku would have taken out Shigaraki, taken out the biggest factor. This means that there would be no such thing as a prison break arc, since I'm pretty sure that's going to happen in the manga, not too sure, but there would be no such thing as that. Deku would proceed to take out Shigaraki and would go into Recovery Girl's medic room. Recovery Girl would help him heal, and this is when Deku would just tell the heroes that they won. Deku would proceed to get up wobbling and would hold his hand out high and would proceed to say, I did it. All Might. I saved everybody. All Might would walk into the room in a small Might form and say, I'm proud of you, Deku, for everything. You saved the hero world as we know it, and this world owes you a huge debt for what you've done. This is when All Might would basically go in to visit All For One in the chamber, and All For One would be fuming from the mouth. All For One would be extremely angry, pissed that his plan had failed. It was all the hero's fault. And this is when All Might would basically proceed to tell All For One that they're actually going to be executing him. All For One would proceed to say, no, you can't do that. That's not the way of the heroes. This is when All For One would say, I put in the order to have you executed, and this is the safest bet. We can't have you rampaging out again. This means that the threat of All For One would be dealt with. Deku, the final successor to Quirk One For All, would have finally taken that giant threat out, and this would mark the ending. So what if Deku had Shirakumos powers? As for something you guys may be wondering, in the future all of them ended up becoming pro-heroes. Deku ended up getting together with Uraraka, and they created their own agency together. As for Deku's successor, I'm not going to get that far. Deku would have become a hero, the greatest hero of all time, and he would be renowned as Cloud Hero 9. That's his hero name. Everybody around the world would know his name, and he would be the strongest hero ever, having possession of 7 quirks. As we all know now, we're only aware of the 3 quirks, so I'm not going to give him any other quirks, but whatever he gets in the manga, he also ends up getting as to the 4 quirks. But yeah, with that being said, this is going to mark the ending to What If Deku had Shirakumos powers. If you guys enjoyed the run for this amazing series, I really want you guys to let me know what you thought of the ending, as well as leaving a like in the down below, and consider subscribing, since I'm definitely going to be pushing out brand new content and something else you guys may enjoy as well. I know the Shirakumo series was definitely very dear to my heart, since I had a lot of fun writing the series. Well, not writing it, since I didn't actually write a script. More like I just wrote big points. I had a lot of fun doing this series. It was one of the favorites that I've ever done in my channel. But hope you guys enjoyed it as much as I did. And with that being said, Zether